What if the most mysterious power on Earth is hidden in your veins? The Rh negative factor is the ancient biological question of a lineage that spans from deep within the Earth to possibly seeded from the stars. Only 15% of people carry this legacy of sovereign human defiance, a secret code held within their very blood. This episode goes from caves to cosmos to consider the power of outsiders. I'm Joy, your host of the Future Lore, where we explore the mysterious with endless curiosity and joy. And this is your quick reminder to drop us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell on YouTube. Follow, rate, and review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. These free little clicks are your signal to the algorithm that you care about the edges of reality and consciousness and want more episodes just like this. Now, you might have heard that people with Rh negative blood type often feel like an outsider in their own species, like a line of code that doesn't quite compile with the rest of the program. Maybe you've heard of the anecdotal traits, like weirdly keen intuition, a sensitivity to sunlight, but less like a burn and more like an allergic reaction, a body temperature that always runs a little low. Some people even report a strange resistance to hypnosis, as if some internal firewall just won't grant access to the system. And then there's the constant nagging knowledge that you just don't quite belong, like watching the world from behind a one-way mirror, leading some to wonder if they might even be starseeds, literal alien immigrants from beyond Earth's borders. But what if these aren't just personal quirks? What if they really are biological markers, the faint signal of a hidden operating system? A significant minority of about 15% of the human population has Rh negative blood type, with researchers openly admitting that its very existence is a strange evolutionary puzzle that has defied easy explanation. We're going to explore two ideas that suggest this isn't a random mutation, but a system for sovereignty in our very blood. The question is the Rh negative umbilical cord a deep attachment to the Earth? Or is it a signal of a non-human, even cosmic lineage? We are about to investigate some wildly conflicting perspectives. The core of this mystery is a single biological anomaly. Rh positive blood means that you have the rhesus protein. Every primate, from the smallest monkey to the largest ape, carries this protein. It is a signature of our shared lineage. So why is it missing in a percentage of humans? It's a genetic anomaly that suggests a break in the chain, a missing link that happened not millions of years ago, but recently, and only in us, that it is a weird fork in the human code. This is the center of a dense web of claims, and we need to map out the lore that has grown around it. First, there are physical markers, like the lore of the blue bloods. People with Rh negative blood report higher statistical rates of red hair, blue, green, or hazel eyes. They often note lower than average body temperature and a pronounced sensitivity to sunlight. There are even some claims of an additional vertebra, a little extra bonus in the very scaffolding of the body. These are the visible signs that something is different. Then you have the internal differences, the shifts in sensory, and some might say, sovereign perception. The lore describes a heightened intuition that feels less like a vague gut feeling and more like a high-speed data download, providing answers to questions you haven't even consciously asked. It's the experience of unusually vivid or even lucid dreams, a nightly beta test in other realities. And then there's the reported pervasive, lifelong feeling of otherness, of being a foreign exchange student on your own planet, watching human behavior with a kind of affectionate but confounded anthropological curiosity. It's a sense of somehow knowing the inner workings of people or events, a kind of spoiler alert for reality that can't be logically explained. And it sounds like a gift, but it often feels like a curse. It's not always fun to carry the weight of knowing, while you have to just watch the scene play out. And this internal landscape also gives rise to what we call the traits of sovereignty. Anecdotal reports and even some psychological studies point to a natural resistance to hypnosis and mass suggestion related to blood type. Not a conscious defiance, but a deep systemic incompatibility with giving in to the authority of consensus reality. This skepticism isn't from a place of adolescent rebellion, but a fundamental inability to accept top-down control without rigorous personal verification. Not just hard to convince, but running on an encrypted software in a world of open networks, a natural target for systems of control, precisely because it's been noticed, it's so difficult to hack. But let's pause here for a moment. This isn't just a list of traits. This is a profile of people who are fundamentally incompatible with the status quo. Now, why would nature engineer that? The most dramatic expression of this code is also its most dangerous function. During pregnancy, if an Rh-negative mother carries an Rh-positive child, her body often will identify the baby's blood as a foreign invader and build antibodies to attack it. Before we had modern interventions like the drug Rogam, this system would aggressively patrol its own perimeter, identifying and rejecting any code that doesn't match its own. A system that is built from the ground up to protect its own integrity with lethal force. This ruthless biological reality gives rise to two wildly conflicting origin stories. The first is the theory of ancient Earth purity. Some researchers propose that Rh-negative is the original blood of the Cro-Magnon, a pure, unmutated human template inherited from the first modern humans to walk through Europe. It's the idea that this isn't a new code, but the original code, and the one most backed by science. The other theory is far stranger, the non-human lineage. That's the theory that this blood is the marker of a hybrid ancestry, an extraterrestrial or interdimensional intervention. So, let's follow the anomaly. Does our very biology contain a key for resisting conformity? If the answer is yes, then where did this code survive? We begin in the place where this genetic code was isolated and preserved, untouched by the modern migrations that shaped the rest of the European continent, the Basque country. Numerous genetic studies confirm that the Basque have the highest concentration of Rh-negative blood of any population on Earth, with some estimates reaching as high as 35 to 40%. That's not a statistical blip, but a massive shift in the human genome, pointing to something unique happening in this specific lineage that demands an explanation beyond simple random chance. Scientists refer to the Basque as a relic population. That's a technical term for a group that has been so isolated for so long that their genetics provide a window into a much more ancient period. They are, in a very real sense, a living genetic time capsule, a biological picture of humanity as it existed before the great agricultural revolutions and migrations that transformed the continent. Before the human story was overwritten by a few dominant cultures, it was a much larger mosaic of thousands of distinct peoples. The Basque are one of the last surviving intact tiles from that ancient European mosaic. Even their language, Euskara, is what linguists call a language isolate, meaning it is completely unrelated to any other known language on the entire planet. It doesn't share a family tree with Spanish, French, or any of the Indo-European languages that geographically surround it. It is an utterly unique voice from a forgotten world, and its survival is just as miraculous as the Basque genetic signature. For tens of thousands of years, the formidable peaks and deep valleys of their mountainous homeland served as a natural barrier, a physical fortress that allowed their culture and their bloodlines to remain remarkably pure. Imagine the Pyrenees not as a border, but as a time machine, reaching back millennia, a geologic anomaly that preserved a genetic one, going all the way back to ancient Earth times. Some researchers propose that the Basque people are the most direct descendants of the first anatomically modern humans, the Cro-Magnon to arrive in Europe. These are the direct descendants of a pre-agricultural, pre-Indo-European world that has been almost entirely erased elsewhere. The Great Expansion, a slow, relentless genetic and cultural flood that swept in from the East, overwrote the DNA and the identity of nearly all of Europe. This tidal wave of new people, new languages, and a dominant Rh positive blood factor washed across the continent for thousands of years, but it appears to have broken against the Pyrenees. The Basque, by choice or by circumstance, did not mix. Their language did not blend, and their blood, with its strange resistant code, remained a standout in a sea of genetic conformity. If this theory holds, then the Rh negative code isn't an alien import or a recent mutation. It is ancient, it is terrestrial, and its most defining characteristic, demonstrated over millennia, is its fierce, almost stubborn preservation of its own integrity, a refusal to blend or assimilate, to instead remain distinct, outside, other. The Basque people didn't just happen to keep their genetics intact. Their entire culture, their language, and their geography created a crucible of isolation that has actively, successfully resisted being overwritten for an almost unimaginable length of time on the scale of a single human life. This makes their homeland something more than just a region on a map, but a genetic fortress. But a code this pure and this resilient always draws the attention of the system, and the system's response was to attempt to delete it. So this unique lineage, do we really think it would be left alone? Systems of control don't really tolerate rebels. To understand the attack on the Basque, you have to understand the source of their power, a deep, unbroken connection to the earth itself, recorded for eons in the sacred caves of their homeland. Archaeological cave sites in Spain show us that these weren't just shelters. For thousands of years, caves were cathedrals of the deep earth, with the Basque returning to the same sacred spaces from the Paleolithic all the way to the Middle Ages. Researchers found sketches of animals, slender humanoids, and signs on the walls, made with torches lighting the deep interior of caves. And this wasn't a one-time event. It was a pilgrimage that spanned millennia. Indigenous shamanic traditions speak of these as transitional places, where a cave wall became a membrane between worlds that one could touch to access unseen dimensions. The stone, a living interface, a direct line to the planet's consciousness. This isn't just folklore. It's recorded human behavior maintained for eons. Later groups with different beliefs would enter these same caves and add their own marks, sometimes even Christianizing the ancient symbols now deemed pagan. This continuous reuse shows an unbroken tradition that saw these caverns as places of immense spiritual power. And the art wasn't just for decoration. It was a spiritual technology, an ancient archive where this lineage stored its connection to a sovereign reality. The keepers of this technology, this earth-centric wisdom, were the powerful female healers and spiritual leaders. The Sorganak and their rituals, the Aquelarres, were often held in sacred caves or in nearby meadows, in the threshold between the deep earth and the open sky. The Sorganak were the matrilineal heart of the Basque, the inheritors of a code passed from mother to daughter in culture and in blood. These women's knowledge of herbal medicine was the bedrock of their community's health. They were the living manifestation of the ancient earth-based culture, and that made them a target. When the Spanish Inquisition arrived in the 16th and 17th centuries, it saw heresy, but it was fighting something much older, a sovereign cultural and spiritual protocol that did not answer to its centralized patriarchal authority. The Inquisition launched a war, meticulously twisting every sacred element into a demonic caricature. The Inquisition's own reports described the Aquelarres as witches' Sabbaths. Herbal healing became poisonous sorcery. these powerful, autonomous women were hunted, tortured, and executed. Beyond the cliches of a witch hunt, this was a literal and historical system wipe of culture and genetic heritage, an attempt by a dominant system to delete what it could neither understand nor control. They were attacking the bloodline itself, trying to sever the connections that carried this ancient code of strength. And yet, the tradition survived. To this day, the Basque hold a religious festival at the Zugarramurdi cave, showing just how deep this code of resilience runs. But here's where the story takes a hard turn into the unknown. What if the Inquisition in its brutal campaign misunderstood the very nature of what it was trying to destroy? What if the symbols in those ancient caves, the source of Basque spiritual power, pointed to a history that wasn't entirely of this earth? And let's go back to some of the myths the Inquisition tried to demonize. The Basque spoke of the Gentilac, a race of giants who built the region's ancient stone megalithic structures. They also tell of the Basajon, the hairy lord of the forest, a mysterious Sasquatch-like being that lines up exactly with modern theories that constantly link Bigfoot to UAP activity. And the cave art itself, those repeating geometric symbols found across Europe, the grids and the dots, researchers think some could be star charts, depictions of constellations. Maybe the cave wall wasn't just a membrane to the spirit world. What if it was a portal to the stars? The next theory is the point where the verified historical record we've outlined so far gives way to interpretation. We have an entire episode on the Anunnaki theory, but as far as the Rh negative mystery, this is a story that's far too persistent to ignore. The theory is that this shows an off-world code that isn't from Earth at all. Here we find ancient texts colliding with modern interpretations, claiming that Rh negative factor is a genetic marker left behind by non-human intelligence. The two most common candidates cited in this lore are the Anunnaki and the Nephilim. According to modern readings of Mesopotamian texts popularized by authors like Zecharia Sitchin, the Anunnaki were a race of extraterrestrials who came to Earth in the distant past. The story goes that they needed a workforce to mine gold, and finding the native hominids unsuitable, they decided to perform a genetic upgrade by mixing their own DNA with that of early humans to create a hybrid species, Homo sapiens, as a race of intelligent slaves. Another reading of the off-world theory points to the Nephilim. Mentioned briefly in the book of Genesis and detailed more extensively in apocryphal Gnostic texts like the Book of Enoch, the Nephilim are described as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. In this lore, the sons of God are interpreted not as ephemeral beings, but as physical fallen angels, embodied interdimensional visitors who descended to Earth and procreated with human women. This union created a race of powerful hybrids, often described as giants, a lineage that disrupted the natural order. Rh-negative blood in this context is seen as celestial or angelic ancestry, rare and distinct from the rest of humanity. This idea is often woven into suggestions that this hybrid lineage is either an elite group destined to rule from the shadows, or is a constantly persecuted line targeted for control because of its inherent, uncontrollable power. Let's be clear. The ideas above are the point when you get banned from academia. So, if the stakes are so high, why do these theories persist? Because the logic behind these wild theories hinges on that same biological rejection that we saw in pregnancy. Instead of seeing it as a hyper-vigilant immune system, this interpretation is that Rh-negative exposes a fundamental species-level incompatibility. Sometimes, two species are close enough to create offspring, but are not a perfect match. Like a horse and a donkey can produce a mule, but that mule will not be able to reproduce. These hypotheses apply the same logic to humanity. It argues that the rejection of an Rh-negative mother's body to an Rh-positive child is a genetic echo of this ancient truth, that the two bloodlines, one more terrestrial, or Rh-positive, and one more aligned to the interdimensional aliens, the Rh negative, are close, but not entirely compatible. It's presented as biological proof of two distinct and separate hybrid lineages coexisting in one species. And this is where all those anecdotal traits from the beginning get pulled into the human drama, cast as cosmic. That pervasive feeling of otherness, of not quite belonging here, the theory says that's the hybrid starseed consciousness, feeling out of place on its non-native planet. The heightened intuition and psychic flashes, latent abilities, remnants of a non-human DNA system running enhanced telepathic or psi abilities. And that resistance to authority and hypnosis, that's framed as a core feature, a genetic inheritance spliced from a sovereign race that could not or would not be enslaved. The code resists cloning, conformity, and control because in this version of the story, it was never designed to be a part of the system in the first place. It's the ultimate "I'm not from around here" backstory, written directly into our biology. And it's a great story, maybe the best story, but is it anything more than lore? Well, we have to ask the question. Even if you think everything I just told you is kinda nuts and absolutely totally absurd, could Rh negative blood be so fiercely resistant to dilution because its original source code was never written on this planet? Let's step back and look at some actual published data, because the science is about to get stranger than the stories. What if the biological evidence, when you look at it from a certain angle, doesn't close the case, but opens a door we never expected? Let's look at what the lab work says, because the Rh negative blood has some real-world functions that are more sophisticated than any myth. 3 studies reveal a set of features that seem almost over-engineered for evolutionary survival, just meant for Earth. First, a 2022 study published in the peer-reviewed journal Immunity and Aging found that Rh-negative individuals have a demonstrably stronger immune response to certain viruses. When exposed to influenza A, their systems produced a significantly enhanced response via interferon gamma, also known as IFN gamma. This is the special forces of your immune system, a signaling protein that activates your most elite killer cells to seek and destroy infected cells with extreme prejudice. This over-the-top response suggests that the system doesn't tolerate infection, it annihilates it. And it isn't a vague claim of better immunity. It is a specific, measurable, more aggressive defense protocol against known terrestrial infections. But what would a system this aggressive do when faced with something truly alien, like a non-terrestrial pathogen, or even foreign DNA it doesn't recognize from the planetary playbook? This hypervigilant immune response is what makes an Rh-negative pregnant body reject an Rh-positive fetus, a system so fiercely protective that it treats even a slight variation as a hostile invasion. But not just a defense mechanism, it's more like biological non-proliferation. Next up, the study showing that rhesus protein isn't just some random flag on your cells. Its job is to transport waste products like ammonium and carbon dioxide out of our red blood cells. So lacking this protein isn't a defect. It means the body was forced to develop a completely different system for managing its internal environment. Not necessarily a missing part, but a different metabolic engine. Why is that significant? A system this resilient and adaptable at the cellular level would have a massive advantage in surviving not just on Earth, but in any environment. Perhaps a body that can handle a different atmosphere, a different ecosystem, a different world. It's a system designed for maximum adaptability, primed for environments it's never encountered. Third, and last for today, is where the off-world file and the science lab seem to collide. Emerging research points to a potential link between Rh-negative blood and enhanced radiation resistance. Studies found a lower frequency of radiation-induced chromosomal damage in Rh-negative individuals. Let that sink in. This code doesn't just fight off viruses, it appears to offer protection against having your DNA scrambled by cosmic radiation. That's not a feature you evolved to eat mammoths. That's a feature for interstellar travel. It's a hardened, lead-lined bunker for your genetic source code, making it resilient against a known risk for humans in space. Taken together, an aggressive immune system, a self-regulating metabolic engine, and a built-in radiation shielding become a tangible biological source code for a survivor, a system designed to protect itself, whether on this planet or somewhere else entirely, engineered for hostile environments. So what does this mean for the 15% of us who feel this unhackable frequency, this code sovereignty? Maybe we've been designed to survive the impossible, and what we thought was a burden was actually a biological declaration of independence for this world and maybe for others. So, the story of Rh-negative blood is the story of a code so resilient it has defied assimilation for millennia. Whether it was engineered by off-world architects or is the pure ancient Earth template preserved by pockets of human DNA like the Basque, it seems to be a lineage of uncontrollable autonomy, a line of humanity that by its very nature resists being overwritten. The system, whatever form it takes, be it an invading empire, a paranoid inquisition, or a modern culture of numbing conformity, has always been threatened by outsiders. It tried to purge this line through persecution because it could not manage a people who operated outside its protocol. It can attack, it can suppress, but it has no defense against a consciousness that is inherently sovereign. And this is the most important turn in our entire investigation. This isn't just a story for the 15% of the population with a rare blood type. The Rh-negative factor is simply a visible symbol of an invisible truth that runs through every single one of us. The fact that every human is encoded with their own unique, unhackable frequency. The vast majority of us may carry the dominant Rh-positive code, seemingly made for easier connection and compatibility within our species. The Rh-negative, along with every other outlier, is a reminder of the sovereign spark of divine defiance, our birthright, and a core command of unfettered agency deep in the universal human operating system, alongside the simple mechanics of survival. And this is the communion. The rare ones, the outsiders, the people who survive despite being set apart, they are not a separate species. Their very existence proves that your power is not something to be acquired, not something you have to work for, earn, or build through years of practice, but something to be recognized is in you already. It is an inherent part of your humanity, the fierce ancient connection to our ancestors, a direct line of data stretching back through time. The deep matriarchal bond to this, our home planet, starseed or not, an intuitive understanding beyond separate cultures that we are part of the living being of this world, and maybe even beyond it. So here's our final message, our weekly dare. Trust the blood within you. Operate as the sovereign you were engineered to be. Your curiosity didn't bring you here by accident. Your internal system recognized a signal it was looking for, a harmonic that felt like home. So, drop it in the comments. When was the last time you felt a sudden spark of defiance against a senseless rule? That flash of intuition that helps you understand beyond thoughts, or even that quiet feeling of being an embodied observer. Next time, don't dismiss it. Don't pathologize it. Recognize it. That's you, knocking at your own door. Let yourself in. Remember, you are far more powerful, far more strange, and far more connected than you've ever been told. Let's keep exploring this wild unknown together. Please support the channel. Drop us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell on YouTube. Follow, rate, and review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. These free little clicks are your signal to the algorithm that you care about the edges of reality and consciousness. Want even more? Visit thefuturelore.com to join our free community and find all of our official links, which are at the Future Lore with no spaces everywhere. Thanks again for tuning in, my loves. I am so lucky to be here with you to embrace the mysterious and stay curious.
Mystery waves through space and time, joyful hearts in